I am the Maven of the Eventide, and this is Vampire Reviews. Damn steel-boned corset. Tonight, alone in the rain, I discuss the good things about the book and film franchise Twilight. Well, Halloween is coming up. I guess something horrifying was bound to happen. Yes, Twilight. Beginning as a young adult romance quadrilogy, inspired by some dream a Mormon housewife had, the film versions magnified the series' popularity explosion into an earth-shattering kaboom. An infamous kaboom. There's no use denying that there are humans in this world who love these books and films. But to the true vampire fan, to us, it is an abomination. It strips the vampire of what made him a significant literary and cinematic metaphor for centuries past. But it is not only vampire fans that despise Twilight. It is also despised by book fans, film fans, feminists, Christians, non-Christians, parents, teachers, children, Republicans, Democrats, the Green Party, cats, orangutans, the old man who sings for change on my subway commute, your mom, and this guy. Yes, despite its popularity, it is agreed upon far and wide that it's not good. And if you want to know why, there are thousands of other critics out there on the internet with reviews that will tell you. But I always say that there is something to love about every vampire, no matter how flawed. Right? I think I say that. So, we are going to focus on the good things that I somehow managed to squeeze out of Twilight. I mean, there's gotta be plenty, right? Well, it gave the world collectively something to hate. That's one. Educated adults who so much as admit to liking Twilight are snubbed out of society. Internet, what did we all band together to hate on with such passion before Twilight came along? Furries? Well, there you go. That's another one. It inadvertently promoted tolerance for sexual preferences. Everything was okay as long as it wasn't Twilight. And that goes for all other vampires too. Yeah, that is definitely one. Every vampire looks good in comparison, even if they used to be dissed for being too gay. Now it's, at least they're not twampires. But I guess focusing on hate is still kind of negative, so Twilight provides the butt of endless jokes. It brings us to tears of laughter. Laughter is a good thing. Laughter and joy. It boosted the economy of Forks, Washington. The real-life town where Twilight takes place is now a mecca for Twihards, and their tourism numbers have been an all-time high for years. Twilight breaks the Bechdel test, I think. Yes, at one point they talk about shoes and having babies and stuff, and wait. That's 6 things already. I just said 6 good things about Twilight. I can't believe how fast I did that. What's it been, like 2 minutes? I am totally counting those as my first 6 things, and you can't stop me because I'm over here and you're over there on the other side of the internet, and there's nothing you can do about it, and I'm gonna be done with this in no time. What's it been, like 5 more minutes and then that's it? I'm done. Oh my god, I think I deserve a break and a drink. I'll be right back. So apparently this has to be a full-length review with depth and stuff. Alright, fine, I'll do it for real. Here are the top 4 good things about Twilight. Why only 4? Because have some mercy.
All I ever wanted, but I'm terrified of you.
Number 4. You're literary now. Yes, you read 2,500 pages in like 2 weeks, and that's, do you know how much that is? Oh my god, that is a lot of reading. The first Twilight book, released in 2005, debuted at number 5 on the New York Times bestseller list, was named in ALA Top 10 Books for Young Adults, in Amazon.com Best Book of the Decade and So Far, and a Publisher's Weekly Best Book of the Year. In September 2006, the first sequel, New Moon, spent 31 weeks in the number 1 position on the New York Times bestseller list. Eclipse sold 150,000 copies its first day of release in August 2007, blasting Harry Potter off the top of the bestseller list nationwide, including USA Today and the Wall Street Journal. But that was nothing. When Breaking Dawn was published in August 2008, it sold 1.3 million copies its first day, and won the 2008 British Book Award for Children's Book of the Year, and the series as a whole took home the 2009 Kids' Choice Award for Favorite Book. In case I'm not getting my point across here, that is a lot of people buying books. Books for the sake of entertainment. And as the last book's release was timed just right to coincide with the beginning of the buzz for the first film adaptation of the series, book sales multiplied exponentially. I couldn't go anywhere in NYC without seeing people of all ages reading it on the subway every day. Yes, a children's book. All ages. Suddenly, young adult fiction was trendy for everyone to read. If you'd suffered shame for being compared to nerds in wizard hats and cloaks for wanting to read Harry Potter in public, you were suddenly free to read away. Because Twilight was cool, because vampires are sexy, and therefore more socially acceptable. And I couldn't go anywhere without hearing people bragging about how they'd finished a whole series in a dozen days. Grown adults. But they were reading on their commute now instead of playing Bejeweled. Thousands of pages they were reading. And then what did they do when Twilight ran out and they were still hooked on this new reading thing? Why, didn't Stephanie Meyer state that each book in the series was inspired by and loosely based upon a literary classic? Twilight's Pride and Prejudice, New Moon's Romeo and Juliet, Eclipse is Wuthering Heights, and Breaking Dawn is Merchant of Venice and A Midsummer Night's Dream. Why yes, you could go and read those and highlight every line that you thought was so Edward or so Bella. Sure, they were on your school's reading list back in 9th grade, but you didn't know the wonder of books back then. You're super literary now, reading challenging classics and everything. What comes after those? Perhaps you moved on to James Joyce or Dostoevsky? Oh my god, your brain became an explosion of highbrow awesomeness. And not only did the saga encourage young people to read, they also began to write. Sure, the writing may not be good, but everyone has to start somewhere, right? And besides the endless streams of fan fiction, porn, who wasn't thinking, if Stephanie Meyer could write Twilight in a mere 3 months and become rich and famous, then damn it, so can I. And right they did. We're all familiar with the latest success story, and where would the world be without that pinnacle of literature? It changed society, and that's just inspirational to all the would-be authors out there. Think of what's next on the horizon for us. It is so good that reading and writing as a hobby has found a resurgence. I mean, just when I was starting to really worry about kids these days spending all their time outside playing sports and getting fresh air and daylight. So much better that they stay up all night in their parents' basement writing fan fictions and warping classic literature to contrive to their indulgent fantasies. Thank you, Twilight. Number 3, supply and demand. It was the summer after the last Harry Potter book had come out, and the afterglow had finally worn off. The next film wasn't due to come out for an entire year. The fans were bereft, alone, in need of something to cling to fill the void. Why had their beloved half-blood prince been mysteriously pushed back more than 6 months? Could the rumors of its fear to compete with this new upstart of a franchise be true? A vampire franchise? What was it about this Twilight that it dared to compete and win against the almighty Harry Potter? These fans were intrigued, After all, the film would star the very man candy from the Goblet of Fire, and though they had been children when Harry Potter began, a vast majority of them had now grown up into nubile young ladies who were realizing they developed different criteria for what they desired from their fantasy fare. And so, when they discovered that there were books, not one book but 4 books in the Twilight Saga to devour, and that they offered the same fantastical high school escapism as Harry Potter, but now with romance, their worlds were changed forever. They were but girls when they had been with Harry, but now, with Edward, they could be women who yearned, dare I say, lusted for more. I've always said that there are 2 reasons to read fiction, watch movies, indulge in entertainment in general. The first is to enjoy yourself, well, perhaps enriching your mind, or growing, or learning something, making yourself think, even if just a little bit. The second reason is pure, mindless, indulgent fantasy. And there is a market for gratuitous escapism, guilty, guilty, guilty pleasures. Twilight provides a valuable service, fills a genre niche for which there is a demand. Someone's got to do it right, might as well be a vampire.
I feel very protective of you.
Sure, it's true that Bella and Edward's relationship meets all 15 criteria set by the National Domestic Violence Hotline for being an abusive relationship, but you still read it and wish someone loved you even half as much as he loves her. Sure, it's bad for you and you know it, but it feels so good and just hits the spot when you need that kind of indulgence. It's the Ben and Jerry's of vampires.
I like watching you sleep.
You see, Twilight particularly appeals to a very specific, certain type of girl. The type who may feel a little different from others, like she doesn't quite fit in, alienated, a little awkward in her own skin, searching for a sense of belonging. Yes, we call this type teenagers. And anyone who has any memory of ever being a teenager. Aside from featuring the Pride and Prejudice inspired hate at first sight romance novel plot cliche, but works every time, the fact that Bella is written as a blank slate with minimal description draws these girls in. They can easily imagine themselves in her place, step into her shoes, and live her adventures. Yes, they too could be the girl who on the first day of school all the boys are instantly in love with. Like her, they could have their cake and eat it too. For you see, Bella is very fortunate that she's met the one teenage boy in the world who is so hot for her that he can barely contain murdering her with his desire, but refuses without fail to ever act on it. Therefore, she is free to express her desire for sex without ever having to face any of the consequences of actually having to go through with it. In the real world, in order to avoid such physical, emotional, or social consequences, many young girls feel they must repress their desires from their hot-to-trot teenage boyfriends, and for them, this can be very frustrating. So, being able to lose themselves in a fantasy with an avatar who's wanted and worshipped but always entirely safe is the epitome of escapism. And when I say entirely safe, I mean entirely. The entire 4th book, the huge climax of the saga, can be summed up as... Oh wait, never mind. Everything that could possibly go wrong for Bella ends up turning out okay. Super happy endings all around, practically everyone getting paired off into happy couples. Bella gets everything she's ever wanted without having to make any of the sacrifices she was afraid she'd have to make. The ultimate consequenceless fantasy for all the frustrated, outcast-feeling teenagers there ever were. And to think, if they hadn't discovered Twilight right as the Harry Potter well ran dry, they might have turned to lives of crime or something. Hooligans and whores, man. I mean, thank goodness that they stayed inside and just Rule 34'd the hell out of Twilight instead.
All I've ever wanted, but I'm
Number 2, genre popularization. Of course, vampires have been pop culture icons for over a century. The most ubiquitous of classic monsters. There haven't been more adaptations of Dracula than anything else ever for nothing. But as with horror in general, vampire popularity has always been restricted to more of a subculture, or reserved for Halloween. In 2005, Vampire was listed by the National Retail Federation as the second most popular adult Halloween costume. But what else happened in 2005? That's right. Twilight gave vampires an almighty shove out of the shadows and into the spotlight, and soon they became popular year-round. If it wasn't for Twilight, the only mildly renowned Southern vampire mysteries would have never been made into a hugely successful summertime TV show. Same goes for the Vampire Diaries. Remakes of classics. The American version of Let the Right One In wouldn't have ever been noticed. For good reason, but that's a discussion for another night. And thereby, one of the best vampire books ever written might have languished in relative obscurity. Once it was obvious that vampires had become the hot-in thing, the market was quickly flooded with books, toys, books, movies, books, comics, books, and books. Yes, Sturgeon's Law ran wild, and there's a lot of crap that came out of it all. But for every 10 Mr. Darcy Vampire and Dracula the Undead, we have one good vampire thing that was finally offered a market to grow popular, or even exist at all. And even though our poor vampire genre is now oversaturated with embarrassing, stupid junk, we have so much more that never would have seen the light of night. Believe it or not, before Twilight, vampires were a largely untapped subject in teen fiction. The kind of vampires that teens could relate to were always the exceptions to the rule. So why was it that Twilight was able to turn that around? We all know what the readers saw in the human character, but what was it about the vampire? Well, that brings me to the number one good thing about Twilight.
All I've ever wanted, but I'm terrified of you.
They sparkle. Yes, this is a good thing.
Beautiful. This is the skin of a killer.
You see, there exists a trope known as our vampires are different. Considering that vampires are the most widely used urban fantasy creatures, every version's creator is bound to have different ideas on what's right about how they should be portrayed. Truly, there is no right way for vampires to be. You can go back to the most original mythical lore, but most of those stories are about drooling corpses or spirits, and that's not what people want when they're using vampires as characters in media. The reason Twilight brought vampires to the forefront of popularity, and not just the teen romance aspect of the books, was because it offered a breed of vampire that hadn't existed before. And not just one random good vampire amid a sea of villains. Whole families of totally socially acceptable vampires. They're morally evolved, self-proclaimed vegetarians who eat animals rather than humans. Also, it doesn't hurt that they're all ravishingly gorgeous. And this isn't coincidence just because pretty people were chosen to be vampires like in some canons. No, this is an effect of being this kind of vampire.
Everything about me invites you in.
And something that's kind of beautiful about this is that Stephanie Meyer didn't do it intentionally as a way to subvert tropes or force her ideas to be unique. No, she had no idea what the tropes even really were. She publicly states that she was too squeamish to watch gory vampire movies or even to read Bram Stoker's Dracula. And then once she started writing, she actively refused to read other books or research vampire mythology because she didn't want to spoil herself. No, she simply wrote from her heart what she, as someone with a 16-year-old reading level interest apparently, wanted her vampires to be, and thus appealed to the preferences of the audience without ever even having to know what other vampires were much like. And the simple sincerity of her fantasies was something that moved people. And when it comes to the our vampires are different trope, the Twilight vampires are some of the most different ones I have ever come across that are still inarguably vampires. And yes, they are still technically vampires. They are immortal, undead, blood-drinking creatures. Garlic steaks, holy atoms, and sunlight don't harm them. They don't sleep during the day. In fact, they don't sleep at all. Ever. And they have the best breath in the world. They don't have fangs. Their bites carry a venom that make up all their bodily fluids. Instead of getting stronger as they age, newborn vampires are the most lethal. Some vampires have random different powers that are related to natural abilities they had as humans, enhanced by their vampireness. For the vampires we get to know in the series, their top priorities are their families and the well-being of others. And they sparkle. The reason they sparkle is because their flesh has crystallized and become like stone, like diamonds. Unfortunately, this means that if humans see them, they'll know they're freaks, so they can't go out in direct sunlight in public. But that's a small price to pay for the fact that their bodies have become so tough and indestructible that, combined with their lack of weaknesses, they are some of the most powerful vampires ever conceived. Seriously, as much flack as Twilight gets for the vampires being prissy emo panty pants, if it were Deadliest Warrior Vampire Edition, they would win. Now, call this Mary Sue style bad writing all you like, but it's not like the characters are without flaws. They're just mental and emotional flaws, not physical ones. All that phenomenal godlike power, and yet they're still so sensitive and good. Before, vampires could only so deeply appeal to the strange and unusual, those of us with perhaps an extra pronounced dark side. But this gratuitous god mod version of vampires made them accessible to everyone. And who's to say that they're any less right as vampires than any other fictional version we've ever enjoyed? They are so freaking different and sparkly. And that is creative. And creativity is a good thing. Oh my god, I did it. I am the Maven of the Eventide, and I did it! Oh, I did it! I did it!
Get your sparkle on.
Oh, Linkara, my revenge will be strong. So much revenge will be mine!